Good morning. What's today? I don't know what today is. Thursday. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm looking over there to see it. Yeah, today's Thursday. What's up? It is this is a great place to be if you are interested in the Word of God. If you want to become more familiar with and more knowledgeable, have a greater understanding of the Word in general, right? Like I just kind of want to know some of the background and I want to know some of the things. I'm going to deep dive in some places, some spaces, and some scriptures because I got something I want to study, but I want to have good working knowledge of the Word. I'm going to be able to, you know what I'm saying? Get in here and get around and find things that I need to find, then you're in a great place because what we want to do here is help you to build the habit of reading your Bible every day. So, welcome to our Mornings in the Word. This is Bible reading. It's day 75. We're going to be reading Deuteronomy chapters 14 through 16. Got my water. All right, got my water. Oh, did I tell you who I am? What's up? I'm your girl, Pastor Courage Molina of Bold Faith Community Church. Girl, I'm your pastor, Bold Faith Community Church. I'm your girl, Pastor Courage Molina. I started out as everyone's favorite Bible teacher. I probably still am, but I'm a pastor now. Pastor of Church Online for Women of Purpose, all the things. Let's get into this chapter 14. Oh, wow, I can see we're going to be reading something exciting today. Ceremonially clean and unclean animals. That's going to be exciting. It's just taking us back to like a reminder of all the things that were laid down the first time. A lot of time has passed and now Moses is not going to enter in. He's getting ready to be separated from them. He's going to pass on to the Father and they're going to be going on without him. And so this is like his address, his union address to the union. It's like his thing, right? Chapter 14, we're talking about ceremonially clean and unclean animals. Since you are the people of the Lord your God, never cut yourselves or shave the hair above your foreheads in mourning for the dead. You have been set apart as holy to the Lord your God, and he has chosen you from all the nations of the earth to be his own special treasure. You must not eat any detestable animals that are ceremonially unclean. These are the animals you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roe deer, the wild goat, the addax, the antelope, and the mountain sheep. You may eat any animal that has completely split hooves and chews the cud. But if the animal does not have both, it may not be eaten. So you may not eat the camel, the hare, that's a rabbit, by the way, or the hyrax. They chew the cud, but do not have split hooves. So they are ceremonially unclean for you. And you may not eat the pig. It has split hooves, but does not chew the cud. So it is ceremonially unclean for you. You may not eat the meat of these animals or even touch their carcasses. Of all the marine animals, you may eat whatever has both fins and scales. Let me do that again. Verse 9. I'm going to come back to verse 9. So that means no pork, no bacon, no sausage, no ribs, unless they're beef ribs, like none of that. No chitterlings, chicharrones, none of that. Roasted pork, ham, pepperoni, salami. Okay, all of these things. All right, verse 9. Of all the marine animals, you may eat whatever has both fins and scales. It's got to have fins and scales in order for them to eat it. You may not, however, eat marine animals that do not have both fins and scales. They are ceremonially unclean for you. You may eat any bird that is ceremonially clean. These are the birds you may not eat: the griffin vulture, the bearded vulture, the black vulture you may not eat, or the kite, the falcon, buzzards of all kinds, ravens of all kinds, the eagle, owl, the short-eared owl, the seagull, hawks of all kinds, the little owl, the great owl, the barn owl, the desert owl, the Egyptian vulture, the cormorant, the stork, heron of all kinds, the hoopoe, and the bat. All winged insects that walk along the ground are ceremonially unclean for you. and may not be eaten. But you may eat any winged bird or insect that is ceremonially clean. You must not eat anything that has died a natural death. You may give it to a foreigner living in your town, or you may sell it to a stranger, but do not eat it for yourselves, for you are set apart as holy to the Lord your God. You must not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. All the things here. Verse 22. That marine thing, that also means you can't eat shrimp. Now, for me, I'm allergic to shrimp, so it's fine. But then what about crawfish and crabs and lobster? You can't eat those either. Verse 22, you must set aside a tithe of your crops, 1/10 of all the crops you harvest each day. Bring this tithe to the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored, and eat it there in his presence. This applies to your tithes of grain, new wine, olive oil, and the firstborn males of your flocks and herds. Doing this will teach you always to fear the Lord your God. Now, when the Lord your God blesses you with a good harvest, the place of worship he chooses for his name to be honored might be too far for you to bring the tithe. If so, you may sell the tithe portion of your crops and herds, but put the money in a pouch and go to the place the Lord your God has chosen. When you arrive, you may use the money to buy any kind of food you want: cattle, sheep, goats, wine, or other alcoholic drink. Then feast there in the presence of the Lord your God and celebrate with your household. And do not neglect the Levites in your town, for they will receive no allotment of land among you. At the end of every third year, bring the entire tithe of that year's harvest and store it in the nearest town. Give it to the Levites, who will receive no allotment of land among you, as well as to the foreigners living among you, the orphans and the widows in your towns, so they can eat and be satisfied. Then the Lord your God will bless you in all your work. Here's a release for debtors. At the end of chapter 15, at the end of every 7th year, you must cancel the debts of everyone who owes you money. This is how it must be done. Everyone must cancel the loans they have made to their fellow Israelites at the end of every 7th year. I wonder if that's why at the, like, we talk about like our credit and being on your credit report. I just wonder. I wonder if that is what it was based off of. After 7 years, it falls off your credit report. Doesn't mean that you still don't owe those people. It just means that it can no longer be reported to your credit report. I wonder if that's where the 7-year time frame comes from. Let me get back to it. Verse 3, this release from debt, however, applies only to your fellow Israelites, not to the foreigners living among you. There should be no poor among you, for the Lord your God will greatly bless you in the land he is giving you as a special possession. You will receive this blessing if you are careful to obey all the commands of the Lord your God that I'm giving you today. The Lord your God will bless you as he has promised. You will lend money to many nations, but will never need to borrow. You will rule many nations, but they will not rule over you. But if there are any poor Israelites in your towns, when you arrive in the land the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward them. Instead, be generous and lend them whatever they need. Do not be mean-spirited and refuse someone a loan, because the year for canceling debts is close at hand. If you refuse to make the loan and the needy person cries out to the Lord, you will be considered guilty of sin. Give generously to the poor, not grudgingly, for the Lord your God will bless you in everything you do. There will always be some in the land who are poor. That is why I'm commanding you to share freely with the poor and with other Israelites in need. Verse 12. If a fellow Hebrew sells himself or herself to be your servant and serves you for 6 years, in the 7th year, you must set that servant free. When you release a male servant, do not send him away empty-handed. Give him a generous farewell gift from your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress. Share with him some of the bounty with which the Lord your God has blessed you. Remember that you were once slaves in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. That is why I'm giving you this command. But suppose your servant says, I will not leave you, because he loves you and your family, and he has done well with you. In that case, take an awl, and push it through his earlobe into the door. After that, he will be your servant for life, and do the same for your female servants. You must not consider it a hardship when you release your servants. Remember that for 6 years they have given you services worth double the wages of hired workers, and the Lord your God will bless you in all you do. You must set aside for the Lord your God all the firstborn males from your flock and herds. Do not use the firstborn of your herds to work your fields, and do not shear the firstborn of your flocks. Instead, you and your family must eat these animals in the presence of the Lord your God each year at the place he chooses. But if this firstborn animal has any defects, such as lameness or blindness, or if anything else is wrong with it, you must not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. Instead, use it for food for your family in your hometown. Anyone, whether ceremonially clean or unclean, may eat it, just as anyone may eat a gazelle or deer, but you must not consume the blood. You must pour it out on the ground like water. I got some thoughts. Really, the thing that I'm thinking about is how far removed our lives are from this, right? In a way that, like, culturally, just some of this, it's like, what? Somebody, a Hebrew sells himself or herself to be your servant. Initially, you think, why would a person do that? Is it because they owe you a debt? Is it because of, like, what? That's not even an option anymore. I don't think that it's an option, right? Not a legal option where I can sell myself to be somebody else's servant for 6 years. What is it that I get in return? I guess they have to provide for their servants in a certain way, right? Give them a place to live, give them food, give them work to do. I guess that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense in our day and age. And so when I read this, I know that if I intend to study it, if I intend to go beyond just reading, it's going to require that I learn more about the culture. I don't understand the day-to-day life of biblical times. I don't know what type of situation. I cannot relate. I don't know what type of situation that a person would have to be in to say, oh, I'm going to sell myself to you. And I don't mean like prostitution, right? Like, I'm not talking about that. This is not talking about prostitution. It's not talking about pimping right here neither, where you're going to be giving yours. It's not talking about that. So I can't understand like how we would be in a situation where I thought to myself, like, oh, okay, I want to sell myself to another person, or that if I sold myself to another person, that I would like them so much that I would say, no, I don't want my freedom. I want to stay here with you. Because the only image of slavery that I can that's in my mind that I can filter, because this is the word they're using, the word slave and servant and all of that. The only filter that I have is American slavery. Nobody about to do that. Not for 6 years, not for 6 minutes. But I know that it's not the same. Culturally, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same experience. Just because a person is a slave, when a person says they had a slave, people had slaves or whatever, it doesn't mean that the slave experience was the same as the colonization of Africa and African peoples from all over the continent of Africa and bringing them in and being a part of the slave trade, what we know and think about today. All the people who benefited from it, all the other cultures. It's not that way. And so in order for me to replace that with what the original readers of the text would have had, I know that if I'm going to study this, I'm going to have to look up some things culturally. Because this right here, it don't make no sense to me. Not to me. You would do that for what? Verse 19. Did I read this yet? No, I think I did. I'm just going to read it again in case I haven't. Verse 19. You must set aside for the Lord your God all the firstborn males from your flocks and herds. Do not use the firstborn of your herds to work your fields, and do not shear the firstborn of your flocks. Instead, you and your family must eat these animals in the presence of the Lord your God each year at the place he chooses. But if this firstborn animal has any defect, such as lameness or blindness, or if anything else is wrong with it, you must not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. Instead, use it for food for your family in your hometown. Anyone, whether ceremonially clean or unclean, may eat it, just as anyone may eat a gazelle or deer, but you must not consume the blood. You must pour it out on the ground like water. Our last chapter, chapter 16. This is the Passover and the Festival of the Unleavened Bread. Seems like there are going to be a lot of celebrations we're going to be talking about here. Okay. In honor of the Lord your God, celebrate the Passover each year in the early spring in the month of Abib, for that was the month in which the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by night. Your Passover sacrifice may be from either the flock or the herd, and it must be sacrificed to the Lord your God at the designated place of worship, the place he chooses for his name to be honored. Eat it with the bread made without yeast. For 7 days the bread you eat must be made without yeast, as when you escaped from Egypt in such a hurry. Eat this bread, the bread of suffering, so that as long as you live, you will remember the day you departed from Egypt. Let no yeast be found in any house throughout your land for those 7 days. And when you sacrifice the Passover lamb on the evening of the first day, do not let any of the meat remain until the next morning. You may not sacrifice the Passover in just any of the towns that the Lord your God has given you. You must offer it only at the designated place of worship, the place the Lord your God chooses for his name to be honored. Sacrifice it there in the evening as the sun goes down on the anniversary of your exodus from Egypt. Roast the lamb and eat it in the place the Lord your God chooses. Then you may go back to your tents the next morning. For the next 6 days you may not eat any bread made with yeast. On the 7th day proclaim another holy day in honor of the Lord your God, and no work may be done on that day. The festival of the harvest, verse 9. Count off 7 weeks from when you first began to cut the grain at the time of harvest. Then celebrate the festival of harvest. To honor the Lord your God, bring him a voluntary offering in proportion to the blessings you have received from him. This is the time to celebrate before the Lord your God at the designated place of worship he will choose for his name to be honored. Celebrate with your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, the Levites from your towns, and the foreigners, orphans, and widows who live among you. Remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, so be careful to obey all these decrees. Verse 13, you must observe the festival of shelters. For 7 days at the end of the harvest season, after the grain has been threshed and the grapes have been pressed, this festival will be a happy time of celebrating with your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, and the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows from your towns. For 7 days you must celebrate this festival to honor the Lord your God at the place he chooses. For it is he who blesses you with bountiful harvest and gives you success in all your work. This festival will be a time of great joy for all. Each year, every man in Israel must celebrate these 3 festivals, the festival of unleavened bread, the festival of harvest, and the festival of shelters on each of these occasions. All men must appear before the Lord your God at the place he chooses, but they must not appear before the Lord without a gift for him. All must give as they are able, according to the blessings given to them by the Lord your God. Justice for the people, verse 18. Appoint judges and officials for yourselves from each of your tribes and all the towns the Lord your God has given you. They must judge the people fairly. You must never twist justice or show partiality. Never accept a bribe for bribes blind the eyes of the wise and corrupt the decisions of the godly. Let true justice prevail, so you may live and occupy the land that the Lord your God is giving you. You must never set up a wooden Asherah pole beside the altar you build for the Lord your God, and never set up sacred pillars for worship, for the Lord your God hates them. That's it for today. Just thinking about all the festivals and things. I'm not curious. It just makes me think. You don't have to tell me about it. I'm probably not going to read it. I'm just saying. It just makes me curious about like all the holidays and things that we celebrate. And I feel like maybe it was always like this, but we just didn't have social media. I feel like now I see like a lot of don't celebrate that. That's a pagan holiday. Why are you giving Easter eggs? Why are you telling your kids about Santa Claus? It's about, this, all this. And I'm not, do whatever you want to do. I'm not teaching on that or anything, but it makes me think of it. And it makes me wonder, because like Old Testament, right, which is what we're reading, this is to the children of Israel. The first 5 books of the Bible is called the Pentateuch. It's also known as the Torah. Okay. Somebody's honking their horn. Also known as the Torah. And so we're Christians and we follow the way, right? The way, the truth, and the light, right? We follow Jesus. I just wonder, like, what happened in the conversion, I guess. I don't know. The conversion to Christianity, that we don't have any celebrations. That they had all of these celebrations and all of these festivals and all of these things that they did to celebrate what God did for them. And then, like, as a community, as a peoples, right? Like as a peoples or culture. And then we come over to this side, what are we celebrating? And I mean, what are we celebrating in the way that he's telling them, do this for 2 days, do this for 7 days. I know that we celebrate Christmas, and I know that even in strict Christian circles, people are celebrating Resurrection Sunday. But I just wonder, like, were there, how we didn't get no holidays, I guess is what I'm asking. How we only got 2? There were just like 5 things that I read there that they're celebrating what God did for them. How come we ain't got none of them? I know that Halloween is not celebrating what the Lord has done for us. Like, I get it. I'm not disputing any of those things. But I wonder, like, how we ain't get no things. And I wonder, are we able, I'm just wondering, I'm just telling y'all about my wonderings. I wonder, like, are we able to claim things, right? Like, I feel like the enemy's always taking something and making it his own, and then it's no good anymore. Can we take something and make it our own and then make it good? But I guess not, because if you were with us yesterday, or maybe it was today, I think it was yesterday, it was like, it was yesterday. Don't, worship the Lord the way they worship their Lord. And so I just, I'm just curious. I just wonder, in, the conversion and all those things, there were a lot of things that we no longer have to do. But just reading all those festivals, I feel like, oh, but we don't get all the celebration either. I know that we can celebrate every day, like, I get it, but you see what I'm saying, like official celebrations. I just wonder about it. Listen, this is how my brain works, and I would probably write it down, and I would probably ask someone that I trust, that I know, about their thoughts on it, or read more up on how it happened. But anyway, I say all that to say, I hope that this has blessed you. And I pray that when you're in the word and you start to have these thoughts and these wonderings, that you just kind of lean into it, that it's okay for you to have wonderings and questions and to pontificate, even if you don't have the answer to it, right? Which is like just talking about it, just thinking about it. I wonder this, I wonder that, pondering. I think that is fun. I think it's a great way to build a relationship with the word of God, and build a relationship with God. Also, just being like, oh, I'm curious about this. I wonder about this. Just like you would if you're having a conversation with anybody else. I encourage you to do that. I also encourage you to like the video and to subscribe to this channel if you want to build your faith by spending more time in the word. This is going to be a great channel for you to do that. Be sure to like it, subscribe, drop a comment. Let me know how this is blessing you. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. All right. Love y'all. Bye.